Welcome to week 3, ladies and gentlemen. So far in our discussions, we've talked about different organizations of anatomy, starting from the chemical level and finally moving up to cells. Now we're going to talk about some things we can actually see. Tissues. Tissues are a group of cells that have similar shape or function. They're the building blocks for organs, and as such, organ systems. First, like always, let's take a look at our goals for this week. By the end of this lecture series, you should be able to describe and give examples for each of the 4 main types of tissues, differentiate between endocrine and exocrine glands. You should be able to describe the function, description, and give examples of different types of connective, muscle, and neurological tissue, as well as identify locations of 3 types of membranes in the body. So in the body, tissue can be grouped into 4 different types. We have epithelial, which will be layers of skin, organs, membranes, etc. We have muscle tissue, which can be found in our large skeletal muscles, our heart, and in our blood vessels. We have nervous tissue, which is found in our brain and in our nerves. And then connective tissue is essentially a catch-all that covers all the other types of cells. So in this video, we'll start with epithelial tissue. Think of these tissues as tightly packed cells, and depending on the shape and arrangement, can do all different things. Remember form and function from our last series. So we can classify epithelial tissues by a combination of shape, thickness, or arrangement, and if they can secrete a substance. First, in terms of shape, we have flat cells called squamous cells. Cells can be in a cube shape called cuboidal, and they can be in a column or rectangular shape called columnar. When we have one single layer of cell, that's called a simple layer. So for example, this would be a simple squamous epithelial tissue. When we start stacking them, they become stratified, or a stratified squamous epithelial tissue. There's one weird one in here that's kind of a mix of simple and stratified. If we take a layer of simple columnar cells and then twist those cells so that they're wrapped around each other, kind of like a Twizzler, a piece of licorice, or like a twist tie, then we would call that pseudo-stratified. There's only one layer of cells, but the way that they're wrapped and twisted makes them act like there's multiple layers. Alright, so let's see some examples. Simple squamous epithelium, a layer of single flat cells. Since they are so thin, they act as great membranes, places like blood vessels and in parts of the kidneys. They allow us to absorb nutrients and medications and get it inside to our bloodstream pretty quickly. A stratified squamous epithelial cell, being made of multiple layers of cells, is better suited for protection. An example would be your skin. Cuboidal cells are often used in glands for secretion. They're typically named either endocrine glands because they secrete a substance into the bloodstream, or exocrine glands when they secrete a substance outside. An example could be the adrenal glands secreting adrenaline into the blood, or sweat glands secreting sweat onto the skin. Columnar cells can do a little bit of both. They're great at secreting mucus as well as absorbing chemicals. This makes them well suited for places like the stomach or the intestines, where the same cell can absorb nutrients or secrete a protective lining on our stomach to prevent stomach ulcers. Transitional epithelium is a special type of stratified epithelium. It's made up of a bunch of layers of cuboidal cells that can stretch or change shape when needed. Great example is the tissue that makes up our bladder. When our kidneys make urine, it fills up the bladder, and that tissue stretches to hold it. That feeling of stretching lets us know when we're full and we need to go pee. So without these tissues, we'd be in a real mess. Last epithelial tissue to talk about is pseudostratified. Again, one layer of cell, but it's twisted in a way that makes them look like they're layered. In the case of the trachea, it allows the tissue to provide lots of protection as well as secrete mucosa to trap dirt and debris.